Hello and welcome everybody. In my previous video I did an unboxing of the Framework Laptop 16, and in that video I mentioned I was also gonna do a video on how to configure your own Framework Laptop 16. So if you watched that video, or maybe even if you didn't and are interested in buying your own Framework laptop, you might have looked at this configuration page, and for people that are not that much into hardware, this can be a bit overwhelming because there are a lot of choices, and it can be a bit hard if you don't know what to look for. So that is why I decided to make this video, so that people that want to buy their own Framework laptop, that they can know what to pick. And the very first option we get is choosing a system, and basically you're picking between two different CPUs, so central processing units. And if we compare the two processors, then we see that they're basically the same. So they're the same Zen 4 cores. They're both 8 core CPUs. They both have multi-threading. The more expensive one is like 100 megahertz faster. They have the same amount of cache, basically they're the same in everything. With the more expensive one, you can also tune the voltages a bit. So if you are into undervolting, then you can with the more expensive one, but it's not really all that useful, I think. And with the more expensive one, the integrated GPU, the iGPU, is also 100 megahertz faster, but it really isn't going to make a difference. And if we look at the price difference, the more expensive option is actually 320 euros more expensive. So for most people, just go with the cheaper option. The cheaper option is going to be fine for 95% of most people. If you're just doing office work, just go for the cheaper option. If you're a gamer, it's maybe gonna be a difference of like 5 frames per second at most, and then you need to have like a CPU bottleneck in the first place. So something like a shooter game that is more graphics oriented is probably not gonna see as much of a difference. So for most people, just go with the cheaper option. If you really know you need that last drop of performance, then it might make sense to go for the more expensive option. For example, you're somebody that works on simulations for projects, and how many simulations you can do in a day determines how many projects you can do, and so it influences how much money you can make. In that case, it might make sense to go for the more expensive option, but for most people, it's going to be fine to go with the cheaper option. That 100 megahertz of speed difference is really not a lot. It's going to be barely noticeable in most cases. Alright, so that brings us to memory. So first of all, there is one major choice you can make here. You can decide to get the memory, so the RAM, from Framework, or you can choose to buy your own. Now, if you order from Framework, you're getting semi-custom modules that are specially designed for the laptop, which is kind of cool. But it is going to be a bit more expensive. This is not just Framework. For most laptop makers, these kind of things are where they get their margins. And if you want to support Framework and just make sure that it's gonna work, then you can just order from Framework. And for most people, I'd say go with 16 gigabytes. Especially if you're like doing office work or those kind of things, 16 gigabytes is more than plenty. And I would also recommend to go with 2 8 gigabyte sticks instead of one 16 gigabyte stick. The reason for this is that with 2 sticks you have dual channel memory mode, where the CPU can talk to both modules at the same time, and that way you get a minor speed benefit. Now DDR5 memory actually has some new technologies that make the speed penalty if you're running a single stick, it closes the gap a bit, but there's still a speed difference. Now if you know that you plan to upgrade later on, it might make sense to go for a single stick, but for most people I'd say go for 2 sticks, unless you have a very good reason not to. For most people, 16 gigabytes is gonna be more than plenty. If you're a gamer, 32 gigabytes might be a consideration. 16 gigabytes is probably just fine, but we're slowly starting to see the movement to 32 gigabytes. Maybe in like 5 to 10 years, this is gonna be the new mainstream. But 16 gigabytes really should be perfectly fine, even for gaming. But if you are a gamer, you might want to, want a bit of extra headroom, and the 32 gigabytes is a very nice option there. Higher capacities typically don't really make sense because you're paying a lot of extra money for that extra capacity. Now, like if you're somebody that works on simulations that take a lot of memory to load and those kind of things, yes, then it makes sense to go for something like 96 gigabytes. But for most people, I'd say go with 16. If you're a gamer, consider 32. But if you don't have a lot of money to spare, 16 is also fine. You can always just replace the sticks later if you want to, right? I actually went for the option to buy my own RAM, and what I just did was like I went to Tweakers, which is a Dutch price comparison site amongst other things. It's also for articles and so on and so on. It's a bit similar to Newegg, I suppose, in that regard in the US. And I just went to the site, and then I just went like I want 32 gigabytes. I want DDR5 SODIMM. So the laptop uses, the framework laptop uses DDR5, and for laptops you want the SODIMM form factor because that's what's used in laptops. And then I want the speed to be 5600 megahertz. 5600 megahertz, and then I just sorted price lowest to highest. Then I actually did not go for the cheapest option because what I noticed was like this module has a lower latency for like €2 extra. So it's a little bit faster, so I went for that option. And I have this exact kit installed in my laptop, and it's working just fine. And actually something I discovered later on is like Framework also has this memory compatibility chart, and it turns out that mine is actually a validated DDR5 module, which I didn't even know when I ordered it. I just ordered it based on the price, basically. But yeah, so most of the modules, I'll include this link in the video description so that you can have a look yourself. But in most cases, if you make sure the speed is the same, and you don't go for like crazy stuff, it should work just fine. So I decided to bring my own memory. So as you can see, I saved a bit of money there. Like this is €82, whereas for Framework, if I ordered directly, it would have been €180. So I saved about €100. But you know, on the other hand, it's not like Framework is a small company, and you know, this way you get guaranteed working RAM, and you also just support the Framework a bit. Then we get to storage. So The framework laptop actually has two storage slots. The primary storage slot where you can put in SSDs that are 80 millimeters long, and then a secondary storage slot where you can put in a smaller SSD of up to 30 millimeters long. So that is actually something to keep in mind. If you decide like, oh, I'm gonna, get a smaller drive, and then if I need more space, I can always, use the secondary storage slot to put in more later. Do be aware that it does not support what is considered full size SSDs, and that you need to pick the smaller 30 millimeter form factor. And the 30 millimeters, they're a bit less common. So they're also typically a bit more expensive. Here, for example, you see the 500 gigabyte is 110 euros versus like 80 euros for the full length one. So you're paying about 30 euros extra. So here, like with the memory, you can either buy from Framework. Framework is using Western Digital Black drives, which are actually pretty good drives. I'd say they're one of the Western Digital Black is definitely up at the top in terms of like reliability, performance, those kind of things. So they're very good drives. They're very good options. Or you can buy your own. That is what I decided to do. So I went to Tweakers. They have this nice article called Best SSDs. It's nice when languages are kind of close, so you don't need to translate too much. And here, like, they have the best SSD, the Crucial P310, which offers a very nice price to performance ratio. They also have the fastest, the Samsung 990 Pro, which is about like 35 euros more expensive, basically. And then like the budget king that is like 10 euros cheaper than the Crucial one. And they also have like this performance chart. And if we look at the score index for light use, then we see that the value topper, so the Crucial drive, actually takes the crown here. Although the Samsung 990 Pro is within 1%, so it's probably a measurement error, and they're basically the same. And then if we look at the value, so the budget topper, then we see that the Crucial drive is 25% faster for 10 extra euros. But if you're on a budget, then, the Kingston drive is still quite fine. And then if we look at the score chart for heavy use, then we see that, the Samsung 990 Pro definitely takes the performance crown. The Crucial is quite close. So, for the Samsung 990 Pro, it's like 50% more expensive, while offering only 11% more performance. So for most people, I'd say the Crucial drive is perfectly fine. And if we look at the Kingston is actually still pretty high up in the chart if you look, but the Crucial is like 10 euros more expensive and offers 11% more performance. So it's just a better value option in that sense. So I went for my own, the option to buy my own SSD for about 65 euros. So I saved about 60 euros there. Although it should be noted that the Crucial drive is probably a bit slower than the Western Digital Black drive. I don't know for sure, but typically I expect that to be the case. But all of these options are all great options. And nowadays, especially if it's just like office work you do, then it makes sense to just go. Then you can just buy whatever drive. Speed difference between drives are typically not that big. Like manufacturers always like to put these really big and fast numbers really big on the box. But that's only in real life scenarios. It doesn't make that much of a bit difference, and it's only sequential read and write speeds that they list. Now, if you're working like with big files and need to transfer them a lot, then it makes sense to, you know, get a really, really fast drive. But for most people, just any drive is going to be just fine. One thing to look for, if you are the kind of person that needs to move big files a lot, is that you also look into how big the cache of the drive is, because typically these drives have like they have two storage well, not really chips, but storage places. So you have the cache, which is very fast, and these big numbers, these very high speeds you see on the box are always, you know, if you're writing to the cache. But if you're transferring a very big file, at some point the cache will be completely filled, and then it will start writing to the rest of the storage on the drive, which is typically a lot slower. And most drives nowadays are TLC or QLC. QLC will really see a big performance hit. If you need to write to QLC memory, then you're gonna see a really big performance hit, because QLC is even slower than a traditional hard drive in that sense. TLC, I think, is a bit faster than a normal drive, but the point is, as soon as you fill up the cache, expect speeds to drop quite a bit. So always, you know, always look into this. If you need a fast drive, make sure that the cache is big enough. All right, so that's storage. Then we have the operating system. So for most people, I just say go with Windows 11 Home. But you know, if you're like in a corporate environment, you might want to use Pro instead, because Pro offers a bit more of corporate functionality. Or you can bring your own. That can be either Windows, or maybe you're a Linux user, whatever floats your boat. One tip I want to give is there are some of these websites that offer cheap Windows keys. Be aware that these are like these kind of sites. They get their Windows keys, which are in most cases actual real Windows keys. They get them from lower income countries where they are sold for cheaper, and then they resell them in other regions like, you know, Europe, America, and so on, so that people can buy genuine Windows keys for a lot cheaper. But in the user agreement, it does say that that this is not allowed. So if you do this, Microsoft can disable your key at any point. And this has actually happened to me. I bought one of those cheap keys, and it was blocked by Microsoft, and there was nothing I could do about it. Now, I was lucky because I had bought the key from a Dutch web shop, so they had to give me a warranty. They were not happy about it, let me tell you. But yeah, it's a, you know, I'd suggest to either just, you know, if you're like buying one of these cheaper keys, you might as well pirate Windows at that point. You know, it's like, I mean, it depends. All, you know, it's also depends on what you're comfortable with. But I'd say either just buy a real Microsoft key from a reputable store, or pirate Windows, and don't bother with those dodgy sites. Of course, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a legal expert. But for me, from an ethical point of view, I'd just say get a real Windows key. I actually bought my keys from the Microsoft site directly. You can also just buy them from Framework, and I'm guessing that they buy their keys from Microsoft directly. But yeah, of course, if you're gonna go for I think, I'm not sure if Framework pre-installs it, but yeah. Then we have the expansion bay module. You can either go for like a filler that just includes some fans for cooling, or you can go for the graphics module. So basically the graphics module is a GPU. So if you're a gamer and you like to do gaming, then you're probably going to want to go for the graphics module. But if you're just doing office work, or for most people the expansion bay shell is perfectly fine, and only if you're a gamer or maybe you're doing some sort of work where that can be GPU accelerated, then it makes sense to go for the graphics module. But for most people, just go for the expansion bay. Then we get for keyboard. Yeah, so this is just, I can spend a lot of time here, but just this is mostly personal preference. I went for International English, which is just the standard layout. But if you're Chinese, you might want to go for the Chinese keyboard, or you might want British English, or maybe you want the RGB one where you have like a color backlight for the keyboard instead of white LED. Or maybe you want a blank keyboard, or Belgian one or a French one. Just pick whatever. Then we have the input modules. I went when I ordered mine, I went with the numpad module. It's just nice to have. If you're entering a lot of numbers, it's very nice to have a numpad. I'm probably not going to be using it most of the time, but if I need it, I can just switch it in. And later on, you can actually order extra modules, including the spacer modules. So if you're like, I want the numpad module, but I also want the spacer modules, just in case, I don't need the numpad and I just want to put the keyboard in the center, then you can order them later on. Screen bezel, you have different color options. I just went for black because it's cheapest, and I also to me it feels a bit weird to have like an orange bezel or a different color, but if you like the color, feel free to go with whatever you like. And then the power adapter. I already had a 100 watt power brick from Ugreen, so I decided to not buy one from Framework. But the price, 90 euros for 180 watt adapter is actually a pretty decent price. So if you don't have like a USB-C charger that offers this amount of power, then I'd say you just get one from Framework. The Framework can charge up to 240 watts. So you can also, I believe Ugreen has a charger that does 240, probably some other brands as well. But the Framework charger is fine, and then you can just pick the region you're in. And yeah. For me, so for the expansion cards, I went for 4 USB-C modules. A lot of devices nowadays are USB-C, use USB-C as a connector. I went with 2 USB-A, the full-sized USB connectors. Just because I also have some older hardware which still uses the full-size connector. For screens, if you have a screen that has DisplayPort as an option, I'd say go with DisplayPort, because DisplayPort is faster than HDMI. HDMI can do 4K at 60 Hz, but DisplayPort can do 4K 240 Hz. So if you have a high refresh monitor, definitely go with DisplayPort if your monitor has that connection. I also ordered an HDMI card, just because some TVs only offer HDMI as a connector, and sometimes you also have like in conference rooms and such, you have beamers, and they typically only have an HDMI connector, so you're stuck with using HDMI. So that is why I chose that one. You can also buy an Ethernet expansion card if you use wired internet. SD cards if you're doing photography, I suppose. Audio if you use the wired headset. So I use a wired headset. That is why I ordered the audio expansion card. I still think it's a shame that that this connector is not included by default. But yeah, maybe in the next laptop they can include it. I certainly hope so. And as I mentioned, here you can buy like extra spacers. Even have them different colors. You can buy a LED matrix where you can like put text or battery like they mentioned some examples here. Although I think it's a bit expensive. And here you can also buy extra numpads or macropad modules. And yeah, that basically concludes the configuration and also the video. I hope this helped you with, deciding what to pick for your own framework laptop and how to configure your own. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to answer it. And also, if you picked a configuration and just want me to go over it or have questions about it, yeah, just leave a comment. Alright everybody, thanks for watching and hope to see you in the next video.